This is the second video of section 6 on deploying to Heroku. In this video, we're going to create a production version of our application, which we'll use to deploy to Heroku in the next video. We'll start by bundling all our JS files. Afterwards, we'll optimize the CSS for production and then create a dist version of our application that we're going to serve to the users. Alright, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is replace all of our script tags with just two scripts instead. Bundle.js, which is going to have all of our source code, and then vendor.js, which will include all minified vendor dependencies. To do that, we're going to use a gulp plugin called gulp HTML replace. This gulp plugin will allow us to automatically replace all references to scripts within a certain build tag, which you'll see in just a minute, to one reference instead. This way we can use the separate files during development and automatically create script references to the bundled script when we create a production version. So let's install it using npm. So npm save gulp-html-replace. In our HTML, we'll add build tags surrounding our scripts. So for the vendor files, we'll add a build tag called vendor, which you open with an HTML command and then build : and then the tag's name. Alright. Now we're going to add one for the source files as well. Let's call it source. Alright, and now we just need to close the tag as well, the build tag. So we're just going to add another command saying unbuild. And we'll do the same thing for our source files. Next, we'll add a gulp task to process our file and save it in the dist folder. Again, the dist folder will be used for our production version for the application. So let's call the task HTML replace. First, we're going to add it to our plugins in the gulp file. So just open up a new variable. Let's call it HTML replace. Now let's use our index.html as the input file. So we're just going to take it from the source directory and then index.html. Then we're going to pipe in the HTML replace plugin. And the options we give are the tag names we added earlier, so vendor, which we will then bundle into one file called vendor.js inside the scripts folder. We're going to do the same thing for the source files as well. Alright. And then just finally pipe it to its destination, so the index.html inside the dist folder. Next up is bundling the files into the new files we just specified in the HTML replace plugin. We'll use gulp concat to do just that. So install it by typing npm install --save gulp-concat in the terminal. Once it's installed, add it to our gulp file. We'll create two tasks here, bundle source and bundle vendor. Let's start with the bundle source one. Let's add it to our variables again. So concat, that's the concat plugin we need. Alright. Now let's add our source files, which is all the JavaScript files. So we're going to add the scripts app.js first, and then the rest. We need to add app.js first because it's our module definition and that needs to be loaded first. Okay, then pipe in the concat plugin. We're going to rename the file to bundle.js. And then finally save it to the destination, which is going to be dist and then scripts. Okay, next up are the vendor files. Since the Bower components already have a minified version available, we'll just use those and add it to one file called vendor.js. So add in all the vendor dependencies we need to the stream. First, we're going to add Angular. Just going to inject it here from the Bower components folder and just take angular.min.js. Make sure to select the minified file. We're going to do the same thing for Angular local storage in the dist folder and then Angular local storage.min.js. And finally do the same thing for Angular UI router, which is in the release folder. Alright, and then select the minified one again. That should do it. Concatenate them again and then save it to a file called vendor.js. Also in the dist/scripts folder. Okay, let's run the three tasks we just created to verify that they work like we want them to. Run the HTML replace task first and go check out the new index.html file in the dist folder. It should have replaced all of our script tags with the ones we specified in the task instead. Next up, run gulp bundle stores and bundle vendor to run both of our bundle tasks. Let's check out the script folder in the dist folder, and here we are. Both files are present and contain the code that they should. The bundle file contains all of our application code in one file, and the vendor file contains all of the minified vendor code we need to run our app. Let's add the dist folder to our git ignore since we generally don't want to commit our compiled application. We'll build the application on the server instead. Since we want to keep our production code as small as possible, we'll also annotate and uglify our AngularJS code. We need to annotate it so that AngularJS's dependency injection system doesn't break when we minify the code. AngularJS figures out which dependencies to inject based on the parameter names in the functions, for example, a controller function. However, since the parameter names will be changed when we uglify the code, our application won't work anymore. You can fix this by manually annotating your functions with the array syntax, in which you define your dependencies both as a string and then again as a parameter. To avoid doing such tedious work, we'll use a gulp plugin to do that for us. So install the annotate and uglify plugins by installing them with npm. They're called gulp ng annotate and gulp uglify. Add the modules to our gulp file. So that's ng annotate, then require it, and do the same thing for uglify as well. Alright, there we go. And then we'll just pipe those into the stream for the stores bundle file, and that's it. Let's run the bundle stores task again to verify that we now have a minified file. And there we go. It has properly annotated our code as well, as you can see. In a production version of the app, we'd like to keep all of our extra server requests to a minimum. This is why instead of letting AngularJS load the HTML partials by requesting them from the server, we're going to add them to the template cache instead. That way, all the required templates will be added to our source code in JavaScript, and we won't have to load them externally anymore. We'll have to install two dependencies here, one called gulp angular template cache and one for event stream. We use event stream to merge the source files and the template cache file so that we don't need to write an intermediate file to the disk while building. So let's add event stream and also angular template cache as plugins here in the file. So let's create a merged stream by returning the ESMerge function and then adding our two separate streams. The first stream is going to be the templates one. To compile our templates, we'll add all the HTML files in our project to the gulp stream and then pass in two options. The first one is the module's name, in our case that's packed. And the other option is a root one, to make sure that the paths in the template cache are correct. In our case, that's the scripts folder. Next up, we'll just add the source files like we did earlier. And finally, transform the stream by piping in the concat plugin and then writing it to disk. Let's check if it actually added our templates to the templates cache. Remove the uglify plugin temporarily so we can easily look through our compiled code. Open up the bundle file and you'll see that it now has the template stored inside the template cache. You might have to scroll a bit to find it. Now don't forget to go back and add the uglify plugin again. Lastly, we'll need to copy our CSS styles too. Let's create a new task that takes the app.css file and writes it to the styles directory in our dist folder. So let's add the CSS file first, which is in source and then styles, and it's called app.css. And then pipe in the gulp's destination, which is in dist and then styles. Since this task depends on the Sass being compiled, we'll just add the Sass task dependency to our task here. However, we're not completely done yet. Let's add CSS auto-prefixing and optimizing to the mix so that our style sheets are up to snuff. Auto-prefixing our CSS will automatically add vendor dependencies to the CSS properties that need them, allowing us to use CSS properties without thinking about browser-specific syntax. And then lastly, the CSS optimization will make sure to delete any comments, whitespace, and so on. Sort of like an uglify, but for CSS instead. Let's install both plugins by using npm again. Save both gulp auto-prefixer and gulp CSSO. Let's add both plugins to our gulp file. So the first one is auto-prefixer, and then the second one is CSSO. Alright. And then add them to the stream in the styles task. And that's it. We're done. Let's run the task to verify its output. There we go, we have an optimized minified CSS file. Now that we've got all of our tasks set up, let's create a build task alias that runs all the tasks we just created. So those tasks in order are HTML replace, then bundle source, bundle vendor, and finally copy styles. Since we have to make sure that our production version works as intended, we'll add another serve task that serves up our production version so we can verify that it actually works. Let's copy the serve task, replace the name with serve dist, and set the base directory to dist. Okay, let's go ahead and open terminal and then build the actual application, the dist version. Let's wait a minute, alright, and then serve it. Let's see. Looks like something went wrong, unfortunately. Let's just inspect what it is. Looks like the source file isn't found. Alright, let's go back. Check out our index.html, the one that's generated. And it says scripts source.js. So what we've done is added a wrong reference. Source should actually be bundle.js instead of source.js. Let's go ahead and cancel the server and rebuild our application and then serve it again. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, it looks like it works now. Okay, so a quick recap. We've created a production version of our application by replacing the script references, bundling our source and vendor files, caching the templates, and optimizing the CSS. Now that we have all that, we can deploy our application to Heroku in the next video.